Hello Bookles, my name is Cam and I'm here today with another writing video. This is something I know has been touched on quite a lot by a lot of author tubers or writing people, but it's something that I wanted to weigh in on myself as well, because you might know that in a lot of my stories I rely a lot on cliffhangers. So yeah, I feel that I have a good grounds for weighing in. That's not to say I'm really good at writing them, I have points that I stick to when I am writing cliffhangers that I definitely feel help. Alright, well Siri was a bit sassy last time we did this, but I'm gonna let her roll the intro again, so let's see how that goes. What's my name?
You're Cameron, but since we're friends, I get to call you King Cammy C, the Wolf Prince of Booktube. Roll the intro, bitches. Sorry about last time, Cam, and by sorry I mean sorry you were such a little bitch about it.
Let's talk about some damn books, dude. Okay, so if we're going to be talking about cliffhangers, I first want to give a little bit of a history lesson on what cliffhangers are and how they came to be. So it may surprise you to know that it was actually like nearly 150 years ago that this term came up. It was back in 1873, and it was by an author called Thomas Hardy. The book was called A Pair of Pale Blue Eyes, I think it was, and it basically left the protagonist hanging off a cliff by his fingertips, looking down below him. That's pretty much quite literally how the term cliffhanger came about. So the idea of a cliffhanger is basically just that you would finish a segment of your story with something that hasn't been revealed, something that would bring the reader to be full of suspense or tension, something that you would feel the itch to know or see or hear. Basically, a cliffhanger, in summary, is just something that is left at a very critical moment that hasn't been revealed, that would need to be revealed to further the plot. Something that needs to be revealed, otherwise the plot could go any which way, and in a number of different directions. So the first point that I want to touch on is just a little bit of a misconception. So a lot of people think that a cliffhanger can only be used at the very end of a book or a TV show or a movie or something like that. That's not necessarily true. In fact, it's not true at all. It can be used and is very commonly used at the end of chapters, even at some points midway through movies, as long as there is some kind of transition to a separate part of the story. And while this might sound like me encouraging you to use cliffhangers more, it's also me encouraging you to not overuse them. This might be a little rich coming from me just because I'm one of those writers that like to leave every chapter with some element of suspense, so maybe I could even tone down on them a bit, but it is important not to overuse them. See, the reason for this is that if readers feel like they are being forced into reading chapter after chapter just so that they can have something revealed to them, whether it be some information or the outcome of a dangerous circumstance, they are going to feel a little bit angry about it. See, it's possible to be drawn in by a cliffhanger, but actually not be enjoying the story. It's important to use cliffhangers to make your story richer and more exciting, but at the same time, don't overuse them because you will just kind of exhaust and frustrate the reader. And that's not even me saying if you have a really good story and everyone tells you it's a good story, then you're allowed to use a lot of cliffhangers, because using too many cliffhangers can make a good story bad. And the second point is another slight misconception, and that is that a cliffhanger needs to be life and death, or supremely dangerous, or something that will drastically impact the health or physical fitness of one of the main characters. And the fact is, this just isn't true. It can be pretty much anything that is going to leave the reader suspenseful or anxious to read the next segment. It can range anywhere from someone who's about to die to someone just about to learn some information that could be critical to the purpose of the story. For example, on one extreme, you could have an action story where someone is literally hanging off the edge of a cliff and you don't know whether they are going to make it back up or if they're going to fall. That's one example of a cliffhanger. On the other end, you could have some kind of dramatic contemporary story where someone is ill and you're just about to learn the outcome of maybe a doctor's test or something that will impact the rest of the story. Again, they're two examples of learning about someone's physical health, but I'm sure you get my point. It could also be something like a detective who is looking for information and he finally finds the folder he's been looking for, opens it, and gasps with surprise. Bam, chapter finished. That's the type of thing that's going to draw you into the rest of the story, and it's a really useful plot device. And again, you can use it. I would even go so far as to say you can use it a lot, just don't use it too much, and that's just part of being a writer, knowing where that line can be drawn. See, the thing is, it's going to vary from story to story. Some stories don't have room for as many cliffhangers as others do. My third tip would be that the cliffhanger itself needs to be very abrupt. You can't have a build-up to a cliffhanger. This cliffhanger needs to be a shift in circumstances from this is the situation, flipping it on its head, and there's the cliffhanger, and then you need to move on to the rest of the story. For example, with the guy hanging off the edge of the cliff, you could say that he was fighting someone before that happened, and it looked like he was about to win, and then all of a sudden, he slips and he falls, and now he's hanging off the cliff, and his nemesis is standing over him about to stamp on his hand, or something like that. It just needs to be a drastic shift in circumstances. The main reason for that is that you don't want the reader to see that cliffhanger coming. See, it's even a bit of a dangerous game foreshadowing a cliffhanger because, again, if the reader sees the cliffhanger coming, it's just going to cut away from the suspense and excitement, which is inherently the point of a cliffhanger. So, probably don't do that. Try not to build up to a cliffhanger or put down foreshadowing, or basically just don't try to hint at all that there is a cliffhanger on the way. Or don't try to hint that the situation that will be your cliffhanger is going to happen. Try to make it a real turn of events. And my fourth and final tip, there's only 4 for cliffhangers. Once you get the hang of them, they're pretty easy to have a lockdown on. So my fourth and final tip is to be very careful about how you use cliffhangers at the end of a book. Now don't get me wrong, that's not me saying you can't do it, because it is a great thing to do at the end of a book, to tease the next book or whatever, even if a TV show or movie, if you want to tease the sequel, it is a really good thing to do. There is just one important thing to take on board when you do this. You need to make sure that the major conflict of this story has been resolved. You can have cliffhangers that are teasing towards a greater crisis that links all of your books, but that story's crisis needs to be resolved. Just as an example that I'm sure everyone can relate to, in the Harry Potter series, it does leave off on cliffhangers sometimes at the end of a book, which will tease to the greatest storyline overall, but the story from that specific book is always wrapped up. There's always room for more crisis, but the main crisis or mystery of that book is resolved. Let's just say Philosopher's Stone, for example. The book does tease towards more Voldemort in the future, and you could say that's left as a cliffhanger, but the Philosopher's Stone storyline itself is resolved and wrapped up just like every other book, and that's how you should be aiming your cliffhangers at the end of your story. You don't want there to be any lingering kind of crisis from that specific story that is left unresolved, because that will just frustrate the reader to a very large degree. I know myself personally, if I read a story and the main crisis of that story is not resolved but teased towards the next book, that frustrates me and I lose a lot of trust in the writer. Actually, I feel like it's a gimmick used to sell more stories. The thing is, you could write a really good story and leaving an unresolved kind of cliffhanger at the end is a good way to ruin a good story. Well, yeah, that's basically it. I know this video wasn't as goofy as I normally am in my videos, but I try to keep my writing tip ones kind of, straight-faced as possible. I hope you enjoyed it. If this video is any help to you at all, make sure you show me some love. Give me a thumbs up. All my other social media links are down there below. If you haven't already, check out some of my other videos. I don't just do writing tips, I do a lot of different stuff. I do book reviews, you know, all that jazz. I'm not going to go into it. So if you haven't joined the Wolfpack already, make sure you join the Wolfpack and subscribe. And if you are in the Wolfpack, I'll see you in the next video. Catch ya.